Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Monday, everybody. I'm looking forward to this because we have college football this week. Week 0 is here. Treat it like week 1. Let's be real. Commit to the bit of getting caught up on some of your college football teams that are at least in action. We've got to pick them on our side. I know that. So we're looking forward to seeing some real live college football action, not just talking about it over and over again. And look, when I see the week 0 slate, which we'll get into later this week, Wednesday, Thursday, we'll talk about that. There's a lot to like, a lot of conversation around the ACC with this week with some of the games that the league has in play. Of course, there is the eligibility, uh, kind of world rolling around in all of this, and the 5 for 5 being talked about. But this week for the ACC, I mean, you got North Carolina, TCU, you've got NC State at Virginia, keyword at Virginia now, Hawaii at Stanford, and New Mexico State heads to Florida State for that game. So 4 games up on deck for week 0. We'll break them down later this week, but excited to have you with us on All Access AM. For those of you who don't know us, we cover the ACC. We focus on that. That is our bread and butter. That's what we like to do. And we've been doing it coming up on a year now on this show, 3 times a week. Going to look at maybe doing some different things post games, maybe dropping like a 20-minute like run through some of the games type of things, or maybe just save it for Monday and go more in depth. But we continue to have our shows Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're back on track with that and looking forward to what'll be a fun college football season. Please subscribe to the channel. This is the All Access AM YouTube channel. If you're watching this on it, you probably don't subscribe to it. But if you do, thank you. We appreciate it. And we've got a ton to get to. Let's dive in, though, I think, with the eligibility world, and we'll then assess the bowl predictions and projections, college football playoff talk, see what kind of impacts those eligibility moves and kind of cases can have on the college football world. Tommy Castellanos, the former Florida State quarterback, appears like he's going to be the favorite at Texas Tech as far as a landing spot. What does that mean for Will Hammond? What does that mean for the Red Raiders? Well, they've not gotten through a season with the same starting quarterback since Patrick Mahomes. So they are looking for depth. He did get granted an injunction on Friday, but at the same time on Friday, we saw a group of athletes get struck down with the 2022 class as a whole in Colorado that was, set up to play this fall. They saw their case get stayed, and the NCAA gets a win in that regard. There is an emergency appeal hearing on that front, so that is coming up in the near future. And we'll learn things like, can SMU All-American safety Ahmad Moses return to the Mustangs? He's been practicing with them. Can North Carolina kicker Reese Verhoff get going again? Those are a number of players in the ACC, and Virginia's got a few that are waiting word on this eligibility case, kind of like a final decision, and what that the decision will ultimately mean for the college football season is a big one because Indiana's brought some players back. Again, SMU trying to bring back Ahmad Moses, their All-American safety. There's a number of things, as well as in the hoops world, too, that are impacted by this. Seth Trimble, the former North Carolina guard, now ineligible at the moment for Louisville. So there's a lot of court cases that are still going to be played out. A lot of attorneys are going to make a lot of money trying to find judges who side with the athletes. That will give a favorable ruling. That would then allow those athletes to play in college football or college basketball games if at that moment that's the ruling, in terms of in favor of the athlete. So that's the thing to know. That is one thing the NCAA has come out and said, is that they won't be sitting there taking down the wins and losses and things like that from programs that do play athletes that are ruled eligible by courts. But once they're ruled ineligible, then you have to stop playing them. I know this sounds crazy, but this is what we get to is having to explain this bit by bit by bit. And for these players, it is that weird back and forth of, can I play, can I not play? Those are all of the things that I think we're going to be continuing to watch very closely over the next few weeks, months, I mean, college basketball is not here yet, so I'm sure they're going to have some of their own players, be fighting tooth and nail to the end. There's a lot of NIL on the line if players can play, uh, and there's schools that are promising dollars that if these players come to their school and go ahead and get enrolled right now, that they might be practicing, not practicing. They could be getting paid NIL. They could not be a bunch of things. And the school's not necessarily obligated to get it back from them. And it's just really interesting to see all that play out. James Franklin in favor of it. He's going into his first year, of course, at the helm at Virginia Tech. And if he could get some of these 2022 players back in the fold, that'd be important to him. I mean, he said, quote, it has to be an option. If you want to compete in major college football, you can't say that we're not going to do the things that gives us a chance to be highly competitive when other schools are. And that makes a lot of sense. There are schools across the country that are being aggressive in this. Hello, LSU. Daquan Wright played in a preseason game. It looks like he's got an agreement in place to go to LSU, which is wild. The tight end for the Browns, I think. He bounced around a little bit there. Currently, there's a group of players in Louisiana that are eligible to play, and another group in Kentucky that does have an order that includes Tommy Castellanos and a couple of others, Mark Mitchell, who committed to Kentucky as well. But this is a situation that's going to continue to drag on over the next couple of weeks, I think, and we've still got a long way to go before we see players have to suit up and really get going with week one. So we're about 10 days away from week one going, and so we'll be watching all of this unfold really closely for you guys here at All Access AM, and we appreciate you guys following us on this channel. But before we get deeper into the show, do want to remind you guys about our friends at Security National Bank. SecurityNational.bank is where you could find more information on what they can do for you, your family, your business banking, your wealth management. They handle all of that. And that's the great thing about partnering with Security National Bank is they have that family owned feel because they are. And so people know you by name. You've got a friendly smile when you walk into the bank, when you need to handle business, and even when you need to get in touch on business things, which we do all the time. It is a great feeling when you can email somebody and generally know that you're going to get a response back probably same day and get to work on what your issue is. So they're a family owned bank. They've kept it that way. They've been very, very keen on that, and so we appreciate their support over here at All Access AM. Again, that's SecurityNational.bank for more information on what they can do for you and your banking needs. Trust me, they can handle it all. So appreciate their support of us. And we are going to get into our preseason bowl projections and college football playoff picks here in just a moment, as well as some fall camp intel. And here's the big piece of fall camp intel going right now is SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings has returned to the field. He has been throwing. He banged up that finger on technically the first day of fall camp and has been out for a while. But guess what? Now he is back on the field, throwing 7-on-7, throwing individual drills over the last few practices. Well, on Monday, we're told to expect him to play full team reps in practice. Practices are closed this week for SMU. So as they turn their attention to FSU, you've got Rhett Lashley tightening the grip on who gets in and who gets out of practice. And with that, you have a little bit of that ability now to really start game planning, really start the scouting periods, and turn your attention to fall camp with school here. It is the first day of school for many colleges around the country. And when you look at SMU with Kevin Jennings, they now have 2 weeks to get him ready with that first team offense. It is a first team offensive line that has been banged up in fall camp. They've missed some starters here and there, but guess what? Now they're moving into that period of time where they can take some of the bubble wrap off a little bit because you're going into more scouting periods. You're going into more periods that include prep for FSU. You're not hitting each other as much. That's something Rhett Lashley and his staff are probably going to be pretty cognizant of because they have a team that they feel really good about. Rhett Lashley said that Kevin Jennings is going to be the best player, or has a chance to be the best player that he's ever coached. He said that on the ACC Network Road Tour. Kevin Jennings is an absolutely dynamic athlete, and he's an incredible quarterback when he's on. And when he's on, he's probably one of the top 2 or 3 in the country. I mean, if you're really being a ball knower, I feel like. And you could say that for a number of players, but think about some of the throws he can make, the way he moves around. He threw for, 400 yards against Miami, I think, right there on that stat line. And that's obviously a Miami defense that was pretty impressive and had incredible athletes on that defensive line. Well, he sat back there without a run game, mind you. They were negative yards rushing during that game, and he stepped back there and threw for 365, I think, and he had like 4 drops in that game. RJ Maryland dropped a 40-yard pass. He is just incredible throwing the football. Now he's expected to be, getting that 2-week ramp up to throwing and being in the team reps and all of those things, be ready for Tallahassee. Rhett Lashley has talked him up so much this offseason. They've got a Heisman Trophy campaign, and it's time, or nearly time, for Kevin Jennings to show all of that hard work and all of that buzz that his coaching staff and school have been putting forward for him. It's time for him to show that on the field. That was one of the big pieces of news from the week or weekend, I would say, is that he's getting back into the fold. You do have, certainly some teams getting ready for their week 0 games. Miami, of course, is the Friday night game, all the way out at Stanford, and that is their opener. But before that, Stanford, gets to host Hawaii, a game that they really should have had last year. You do wonder, some of the changes, at that program, if their season might have charted a little bit differently if they had gotten that win against Hawaii last year. That was a tough one for the ACC last year to see that one go against them. But you've got this game 6:00 Central Time for us, 7 Eastern, ACC Network for week 0 on that Saturday night. But you look ahead to some of the decisions being made around the country on quarterbacks. We're seeing a lot of that. Tennessee just named Faison Brandon their starting quarterback. That's obviously outside the realm here, but the quarterback competition we're kind of still talking about a little bit is Duke. Walker Eget, the San Jose State quarterback, who's brought in this offseason kind of the last minute to play and be that veteran guy. He's expected to start, but redshirt freshman Dan Mahan's made it interesting there. Duke has still not announced the starter just yet, and they've got a week 1 game against Tulane, so kind of a big kickoff for that one. I mean, quote Manny Diaz, if it's an hour before kickoff, that'd be great. If it's anything earlier than that, that would be great too. So still talking about who they're going to start over there for Duke. You have Isaac Brown over at Louisville getting back and ramped up for the season after getting nicked up early in camp. Lincoln Keenholz at quarterback needs him to be ready because they're another week 1 big game for the ACC. They've got Ole Miss in Nashville. And look, Louisville was one of 2 teams to obviously beat Miami last year. So they've got talent. They've got a program mindset that they can take down the giants, so to speak, or those big names. And SMU's the same way. And both of these teams have, I don't want to say manageable, but they do have manageable week 1 games from the standpoint of, think about all the change at Ole Miss. Think about all of the different voices that are now over there. Some of the coaches very much the same defensively, but also a lot of changes defensively as far as personnel and things of that nature from that college football playoff team. You do have Trinidad Chambliss and Kejuan Lacey back, but you're also missing a number of those players that were on the outside wide receivers. They've got Deuce Alexander back at wide receiver. So there's just some changes over there in Oxford, and an offseason that is so much dominated by, well, what Pete Golding say about Lane Kiffin, or what did Lane Kiffin do to Ole Miss each and every step of the offseason. Louisville kind of flying under the radar as a 3rd team picked in the ACC. SMU has a game that is difficult in the standpoint from, you've got Florida State with all of their buzz around what they have done in some of these preseason, or not preseason, but big week 1 type of matchups with Alabama, LSU, some of those games. you've got to find your footing early and be ready to go because Florida State's shown that they'll be ready to go. So keeping a close eye on that out there with those two games, the two teams that we're going to talk a little bit about here with the preseason bowl projections as well as college football playoff picks, they're both right there. They're both right there for those conversations for the playoffs. So um, let's get into that. Preseason bowl projections and college football playoff picks have come out from ESPN and On3, and a number of them have a good reason to feel good about Miami going into the season as the ACC champion. Pick that so many people are doing, and having them right up there among the best teams in the country, and not really backing down from that. So it's not surprising, but it's also a pick 'em opportunity to pick something that has never happened. Miami's not won the ACC. They've made it to the ACC championship game before, but it's been a minute, and now you have a team in Miami that is looking to make that next step. And I was talking with somebody over the weekend about it. We were just talking ball. One of my buddies, we were at SMU's former player barbecue, and they said, "Oh, well, Miami's got to be the class of this league for sure." I said, "Yeah, they should be. They should be. They have a ton of talent. They've recruited really well. We see that, but they also lost a lot up front on both sides of the ball. They've done a good job replenishing that, at least it seems. That is a question that I have. And if it doesn't work out or it takes a minute to gel there, number one, Miami has the time to gel, but you just don't know in this league sometimes. Okay, can you misstep? Miami has had a misstep just about every year. It's just what they do in the regular season at this point. Just like it was that they weren't either A, going to win the ACC, which they haven't yet, or B, they were going to lose to Louisville and SMU and then fall off the rest of the way. Well, they didn't. And that's the cool world, I think, of college football right now is you see so many programs that have for a long time been the way they are. Miami, Texas A&M, some of those programs that have always been in the conversation, and then kind of fall off or get talked about a lot as preseason picks for this or that. Well, guess what? They can never hold up their end of the bargain. Well, Miami just kicked that door down. Texas A&M, you could argue, just kicked that door down a little bit, with the season they had all the way up until that Texas game. But you also knew that was kind of a product of the schedule too. Miami had beaten A&M. Miami had beaten Notre Dame, and then they lose to Louisville and SMU, which, shows a little bit about the ACC. But when you see college football now, you look at teams, and we'll look at some of the college football playoff picks here that I think are A, trendy, or B, you're betting on a conference to get 4 or 5 teams in. I don't know if we'll have some of that this year because there is teams that are continuing to stack talent and stack their culture up on top of that, and they're a little bit higher up there to grab those opportunities and take them and use them to their advantage. So I think that's where it gets fun, is figuring out that line to walk. Like, everybody loves Washington, and I really like Jed Fish. Are they going to make the college football playoff this year? I don't know. That's not one of my picks. Obviously, that's a really difficult schedule for them to figure out. That is a program that isn't necessarily in that realm yet. They've had some big games. They've had some big opportunities to make statements. But when you see USC, Iowa, Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon, by the way, Indiana and Oregon are on their schedule to end the season. That makes it really hard as the last potential impression for the committee. Last year they played Ohio State tough, I would say. That was a big home game early in the year. That atmosphere was electric. That is one of the places I want to get to and see. But are you going to chalk them up and say, you know what? They're that much better. They're that much this and that, and forget about if the team even believes in Damon Williams anymore, which I think they do. I don't think that's necessarily a storyline. I think this is the day and age of business, and you get bad advice, and that's what happened to Damon Williams. But when you see some of these programs on the schedule, that's a heavy lift. That's a heavy lift for Washington to have to go through that. So I don't have them as a playoff pick for me. Some people do. So let's dive in. Okay, you have the college football playoff, 12 teams still right now. A lot of people love UNLV as a pick for the 12 spot. I saw Navy picked. I'm not gonna really pretend that I know too much about the group of five as far as who's gonna be the rep, but give me Tulane. I will bet on Tulane going and continuing to play to the level that they've played at. Tulane has been a good enough team the last several years to at least earn a spot. They played Ole Miss pretty tough in the regular season last year, and they didn't come out on top. That game was in Oxford, and then the playoff was a different story, as one would kind of expect a second opportunity there. But Tulane beat Northwestern, a team that ended up knocking off Penn State. They beat Duke, and then Ole Miss, pulled away in their non-conference against them. But then they go the rest of the way. They finished 7-1 in conference. They do win the ACC championship. They did have a loss to UTSA that I kind of thought, in a world where we don't have to have a Group of Five champion, that definitely keeps them out. I, and in a sense, that's where the changes this year. All four conferences are going to have their uh, champions in the Power Four, so that's a good change from last year. But when you look up and you say, okay, you're going to bet on whatever 12 spot is going to be there. They're going to face one of the top teams in the entire playoff. It's not a big deal, but give me Tulane. I think Tulane's schedule is manageable enough for them to get back and prove what they can do. And again, the G5 just continues to get pillaged. It's a tough, tough situation. But give me Tulane back in that 12 spot. 11, this is where I think you see most likely the ACC runner up, either 11 or 10. And that is partly because the committee is going to do what the committee does. But I think you're going to see whoever is the runner up in the ACC championship game. I am going to pick Miami in the spot. I just think that they're going to be dropped off enough after a loss to an SMU, which is my ACC pick. I picked them in the poll, in the preseason poll. I don't think it's a crazy pick. I think when you have Kevin Jennings back, I think you have so much opportunity to really improve that defense that, really it's there, it's in front of you. As long as they're healthy, they should roll offensively. As long as they're healthy, they should be a much improved defense. And that was really all that was missing from SMU to be a college football playoff team. They were 7 points away, guys, in 3 games. So really tough deal. That was what kind of catapulted Ole Miss to have the season they had, is those close losses in 2024. They come back in 25 and do what they did. SMU, I feel like they're going to kind of see some of that similar motivation, and that's a lot of the leadership conversation there. So might be a little high, so to speak, or too low on where Miami would land after a loss in the ACC championship game, but maybe they fall to like a number 6. Maybe they do end up there, but I'm not sure Miami gets past Notre Dame this time. Just not sure. They've got to go up there. It is a big game there. I don't think SMU gets by Notre Dame at this point. I want to see SMU's season unfold, but that is a game in South Bend. Even though the Irish lost to A&M, they certainly aren't a perfect team. I don't think they're as high as some people have them. Some people have tossed around the number one ranking with them, but I think SMU, Miami are kind of in for a tough, tough trip there with a team that it has a lot of motivation to bounce back from what happened to them, that they allowed to happen to them. And so I think that trip to South Bend for both teams is obviously going to be difficult, but I'm not so sure they get by it just yet. I reserve the right to change my predictions about halfway through the season. But when you see SMU and Miami having to go up to Notre Dame, I think that's a big roadblock type of game. Miami doesn't have much else on the schedule. They've got a Clemson game. Who knows what that looks like as far as what we look back on it as. I think it can be better than it was last year, just because I think Clemson will have a chance to maybe get out of the gates and beat an LSU. That's a big culture game in a sense for both teams. You have a ton of money being spent. You have a ton of doubling down on what you do spent for Clemson's case. That game in Tiger Stadium is going to be so interesting. I can't wait to watch that one Saturday night of week 1. But give me I will stick with that. I'm going to go Miami at 10. At number 11, this is where it gets kind of dicey for me. Oklahoma's schedule is crazy. I think this is my opinion. It's a crazy schedule. We haven't played any games yet, so of course we can't talk about that. But I would say Oklahoma at number 11. I think that's a team that will be battle tested. I don't think they're good enough to run through it and be a team that makes it to Atlanta. I don't think they're good enough to be a team that you know sits there with one loss and it keeps them out of Atlanta. I think it's a tough enough schedule. I could see them being a 9-3 SEC team that's in with some quote unquote quality losses in their back pocket. So give me 10 Miami. We've talked about that one. Number 9. This is where I start to kind of go back and forth on how we see this play out. And I don't want to be a homer, of course, for the ACC, but I'll say this because I'm not going to pick them yet because Louisville has a little bit of that similar Miami problem where they lose games that they shouldn't in the regular season. And when you see them with a first year quarterback, this kind of makes me just a little reserved. I would love to pick Louisville here. I would love to pick them as that number 9 team, but I just can't get there yet. And the way they'd get there is by losing to SMU, but beating Ole Miss and being left out of the ACC championship game. So that would be a pretty good deal. The funny thing would be is seeding in this case. I would love to see the committee go through that exercise. Having a team that didn't play for a conference championship above a team that did, and whose other regular season loss might be to Notre Dame. So that would be really interesting to see that unfold. Number 8, give me Texas. I think Texas will be in this spot. The Gooseby injury, the bone bruise that happened to Trevor Gooseby, showed you how thin they still are on the offensive line and showed you a little bit of how maybe worrisome that group is. Just file that away. I am much higher on Arch Manning than most people. I thought Steve Sarkisian's play calling last year held them back. I think they have to find a way to do more to do more with what they have, because that what Steve Sarkisian put out there just wasn't good enough. You knew you had a bad offensive line. You've got to figure out ways to get the ball rolling, so to speak, in that group. But give me Texas here. Again, they've got a tough schedule. I like Ohio State, to beat them, to take care of business, and then they'll have kind of that win over Oklahoma. I'm not sure OU gets that one done in that rivalry game. Number 7, man, it's really hard to see Indiana being at number 7, like ESPN has them at, when you or what like On3 has them at, but with ESPN, they've got Miami here. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna pick somebody else. I'm gonna have Oregon here. I'm gonna have Oregon at number 7. I think they're not going to be able to overcome some of their shortcomings this season. And the major shortcoming for me that I look at is honestly it's Dante Moore. He had some really rough games over the course of his 2025 season. They've got USC on the schedule. They've got Ohio State. They've got Michigan. They've got Washington. It's a manageable schedule for Oregon, I would say. Their non-conference not very robust. I think they're going to beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State. I don't know what people are talking about, thinking that's a not necessarily a trendy pick there. But man, I just do not see that. Taking the North Texas team and just translating it, and moving it right into the world of Power 4 and it working out all that well. So give me Oregon here at number 7. Number 6, I think this is going to be Texas Tech. I think they're going to lose to BYU in the Big 12 championship. I'm not sold on the quarterback situation. I think Tommy Castellanos' whole deal is showing that. I think BYU with Bear Bachmeier is going to be a whole heck of a lot better than they were last year. And then give me at number 5, give me BYU. Yeah, I think that's a team that has a chance to maybe creep up into the top 4. What does that program look like this season? Kalani Sitake kind of doubling down. Don't count out that maybe culture boost for them. I like BYU this year to win the Big 12. Number 4, give me SMU. Give me the Mustangs. I think if they get out of the gates fast and they leave September 4-0, they're going to generally have a chance to cruise into the ACC championship. It'll be difficult. Won't be easy either, but you still have a team that should be good enough. And at least mindset wise, from the outside looking in, it looks really, really good there for the Mustangs. So they'll win the ACC as my pick, and they'll go into the college football playoff as a one-loss team, and an ACC champion that deserves to have their one loss be to the one of the top teams in the country that we're going to talk about here in just a second. Number 3, I do like Georgia. I like Georgia a lot. I think they have a program that is built to just auto cruise through so much of this league, so much of what they get challenged by. So I love Oregon. I love what they're doing. Give me Indiana, or I love Georgia and what they're doing. Give me Indiana at number 2. I think that's a team. I feel like I'm missing one here, but that's a team that is really in a good spot. And then Notre Dame, and Ohio State. This is the one that I think I got off on my numbers here, but give me Ohio State as the number 1 team in the country. Give me Notre Dame as the number 2. Give me Georgia as number 3. And I guess I've got to back somebody out. I mess this up. See, this is hard to do, but yeah, the 12 teams I have to kind of run it back down for you guys. Tulane at number 12, Oklahoma at number 11, number 10. I had as oh man, I messed this all up for you guys. But number 10, I think when you see that group that you're picking from there, yeah, this is where I messed up, is that I had Miami kind of falling back a little bit, following that ACC championship loss, and then I didn't move them back around. But let's go final answers here. This is the fun part about being live and messing up something on your own show. But number 12, give me Tulane. Number 11, give me Oklahoma. Number 10, give me Miami. I'll have them dropping off enough. Number 9, give me Texas. Number 8, give me BYU. Number 7, I'll go with Indiana. I'll fix that. Number 6, give me Texas Tech. Number 5, give me Texas. Gosh, you guys are like watching somebody just go through it right here. Number 5, give me Oregon. Number 4, SMU. Number 3, Georgia. Number 2, Notre Dame. Number 1, Ohio State. So hopefully I got that right. But we'll have to revisit that because I just royally screwed up my own projections for you guys. So that is kind of how I see it. I hope I communicated enough about where I see the top college football playoff teams in my mind. When you look at bowl projections on this front, you see a lot of teams kind of being propped up pretty heavily, I think, in a lot of the playoffs, a lot of SEC, Big Ten. I think this is the year. My overarching thought is, I think this is the year that you see 2 ACC, 2 Big Ten, or 2 ACC and 2 Big 12 teams. I think you see the Big 12 schedule being good enough as far as softness for the top teams in the league to land up there. BYU, Texas Tech, you see those 2 on there, and all they got to do is go play each other in a sense in the Big 12 championship game, and have it be a spot where you've got a game against Notre Dame, but you don't play Texas Tech. So if you can win the Big 12 championship, like I think they will, you're going to be in good shape to make the playoff, and you should be a one-loss team. Then for Texas Tech, I mean, you look up and down their schedule, they don't play anybody. So if their lone loss is the Big 12 championship game, you're in pretty good shape there to make the playoff. So I think this is the year the ACC and the Big 12 get 2 teams in. I think we're in for kind of a shocking season. I really do. I think Notre Dame is at the crux of it all. They play BYU, they play SMU, they play Miami. Those are the big three teams that they play. And depending on how well Notre Dame navigates all of that is going to be dependent on if they enter as the number one team in the country. I like Ohio State a lot. I think they've got a ton of talent. I like the Big Ten again to probably win the national championship in all likelihood. I just think their level of top end talent when it's kind of still fresh because their schedules aren't as gritty as some people make them out to be, in my opinion. They can almost get different bye weeks in there and things like that with some of their bottom feeder type teams, and it works out. And I believe the ACC and the SEC, you can't do that as much. Does that mean the ACC's Miami, SMU type teams are the creme de la creme of talent like Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana? Probably not. I mean, obviously we saw that play out Indiana against Miami, and Miami still had a shot to win, but those top level teams have just a different gear of athletes and players right now. And Oregon's problem is I'm not huge on their quarterback. So how does that all play out? And that's a really, really interesting team to watch. But you see a lot of just straight up Big Ten SEC conversation. And I wish some of the national media would kind of just take a step back a little bit on this and really dive into, okay, why do you like Dante Moore so much? Like what is it about him? And because at the same time in that same conference, Indiana is just getting so talked down because they brought in Josh Hoover and lost the Heisman Trophy winner. And I'm not high on Josh Hoover, but also why is Indiana automatically getting the pass? In a sense, because they're being picked as a playoff team. But Josh Hoover threw a bunch of interceptions over the course of his career. He's had to play a bunch of hero ball. That is a huge unknown. So you've got to figure out a ton of stuff on that front and get organized in that respect. So I don't know. It's a very, very difficult year to predict the playoff and try to find out who those, in terms of my mathing, those 7 teams between the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be. And where I probably went wrong making all my predictions was probably Oklahoma gets left out with 3 losses, even though that's probably a really good team. So it's going to be fascinating. I will do this again next week and kind of make sure I've double and triple checked things for you guys as far as running down the playoff picks. Maybe we'll do it later this week again, but do have a few news and notes and nuggets to pass along for you guys on the fall camp intel front. We did share with you guys that Kevin Jennings is back. Of course, one person not back for a while, Vic Burley, the big defensive tackle for Clemson, as our guy Christian Neal said in the chat, said had a top defensive tackle suspended indefinitely. Yeah, that's right. He got arrested for disorderly conduct, and he is out. He is a player that hasn't lived up to his expectations coming in. It's been injuries and work ethic, and he was sidelined a lot of camp. And then he goes and gets arrested after showing out in a scrimmage. So that was a really difficult situation for that to unfold from a senior, and they immediately suspended him, with Dabo Swinney saying he's extremely disappointed by his actions and decisions. Champ Thompson is also a guy you can watch in that spot try to step up. He's been injured as well in fall camp for Clemson, so it's going to be a really interesting spot at that defensive tackle spot for Clemson now, because you have a defense that did not do well in secondary and covering players and things like that. You got guys running wide open, and part of that is you got to generate a pass rush. So that's where you've got to figure that out too. And if you don't, and get guys like Champ Thompson to step up with Vic Burley out, you have a lot of issues on that defense once again. And Clemson is not. They're not good enough offensively going into the year to overcome some of that. So that was a really big piece of news to come out from obviously the police and reports and things like that as Clemson's defense tackle Vic Burley arrested. So Fran Brown did name Steve Angeli the starter. We knew that was probably going to happen, but they did add a bunch of quarterbacks into the fold. But they did, give Steve Angeli the ball, of course. Other than that, not too much else going on. Davis Warren was named the starter as expected by Stanford. He's a steady guy. He's going to give them kind of that NFL feel of, okay, turn the ball over to him, let him live through this adjustment year, and let some of the recruiting kind of take over and start to see that kind of unfold. But it's going to be really a tough road for Stanford, and I don't see them winning more than 2 games this year. So, with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Sorry for my messed up college football playoff predictions, and we will get them kind of fired back up and fixed for you guys. But gives you kind of a feel of, I guess, the top 13, 14 teams I feel like are right in the mix for the college football playoff this year. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. We'll be back on Wednesday. More fall camp intel. We'll preview week 0 and much, much more on All Access AM. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will catch you next time, and we appreciate all the support of the show. I'm Billy Embody. We'll see you then.